Good morning, everyone. Shabbat Shalom. I'm Rabbi Jenni with Congregation Beth-El, and I'm going to be doing Torah talk in a minute or two. I'm going to give a few moments for others to join me and to log on. So I'll give it just a minute. I see Maria's joined. Hi, Maria. Shabbat Shalom. We have a party. Shabbat Shalom. I see I have Alan joining us too. I'm going to give a couple more minutes, see if any others join, but I see we're gathering quite a few people already. I'll start in about 30 seconds. If you want to grab a water or refill your coffee, I have my mug that says Rega Shel Cafe, a moment of coffee. We'll have a moment of Torah, and we'll all do all of those together in just about 30 seconds to a minute. So grab your coffee if you want. Okay, I think I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'll say Shabbat Shalom. I see I have Cheryl as well, so I want to say Shabbat Shalom and good morning to everyone who's either commented or not yet. Shabbat Shalom to everyone at Congregation Beth-El and to all of our extended loved ones. One of the blessings of needing to shift to this mode is we get to say Shabbat Shalom all over the world, not just here in Indianapolis, but I am so pleased to still get to bring some Torah to my community, even as we're not quite able to be in the building, back in the building just yet. This morning, I'm going to do a little bit of Torah talk on this current portion. This morning, Ken or Melissa will be reading in the Shabbat Chants Encounters at 10:30. She'll be reading from Parashat Vayikra, the portion that is the opening Torah portion for the book of Leviticus. We are almost halfway through our Torah reading cycle for the year. If you have an Etz Chaim Chumash at home, I am on page 585. And if you don't, that is okay. On our website, we have linked to this week's Torah portion on sefaria.org. You can just go to Leviticus chapter 1, verse 1 in whatever Chumash or biblical text you might have handy. And I'm actually only going to focus on that very first verse today because there is just so much happening in it. The bulk of the book of Leviticus will be discussing ways that we access holiness. It'll be mostly sacrifices, working for an animal sacrificial system, and a bit of other ethical codes of dealing with one another and maintaining holiness as individuals and as people. And we will see those as we go on throughout the book of Leviticus. The very famous love your neighbor as yourself verse will come up in Parashat Kedoshim, which we'll get to in about a month. For now, I want to focus on the introductory verse to this whole book and to this whole endeavor of finding ways to bring holiness into the world. The verse, the book of Leviticus and the Parsha of Vayikra, both are named for the opening word. It's very common for our Torah portions to be named for a word that appears in the first verse, sometimes the second verse. So our first verse is Vayikra, El Moshe, Vaydaber Adonai Elav Me'ohel Moed. And God called out to Moses, and God spoke to him from the tent of meeting, saying. So the saying part will go on to the rest of the verse. But there are two interesting things that happen in this verse. The first is that God calls out to Moses and then speaks to him. Often, when we see God speaking to Moses, we only see the speaking word. We see Vaydaber, Vayomer Adonai el Moshe lemor. We see Vayitzav, we see God commanded Moses to tell the people. It is pretty unusual to have this verse where we say Vayikra, God calls to Moses, and then God speaks to Moses. Rashi picks up on this. Rashi is the famous medieval French commentator who really started the project of line-by-line commentaries that we saw throughout the Middle Ages. And he calls this language, this Vayikra, he says is Lashon Chaviva, a language of affection. God is showing Moses affection by calling him first before speaking to him. I think Rashi is picking up on a verse in Isaiah, which we're actually pretty familiar with because it appears in our morning Kedusha that we do when we open up the Amidah. We hear Vekara, Vayikra, Ze el Ze ve'amar. So the angels are calling out to one another, and then ve'amar, then they say, Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. Holy, holy, holy. So Rashi is picking up on that as a moment of calling out to one another before speaking as a sign of love, a sign of affection, and a sign of holiness. It's also important to make sure when you want to say something important to someone you care about and to someone you love, that you call out to them first. You make sure that they're paying attention and ready to listen. So that's one interpretation of why we have Vayikra, God calls out to Moses, before Vaydaber Adonai elav, before God speaks to him. The other thing that I found fascinating about this verse is the me ohel moed, from the tent of meeting. That in this scenario, God seems to be the one inside the tent of meeting or the tabernacle. It's also called the Mishkan, which we saw the Israelites working on building as a team effort for many of the last several weeks of Torah portions in Exodus. And now we have God within this tent of meeting that the Israelites and that Moses created. And Moses seems to be on the outside of it, which is an interesting notion of why is this project that Moses did something that Moses is outside. And so there's a midrash in Vayikra Rabbi, which is one of the earliest midrashic texts, one of the earliest rabbinic texts trying to interpret our Torah, who says, let's liken this to a parable. Let's liken this verse, when God calls Moses from the Ohel Moed, let's think about it as though it's a king who has asked a servant to build him a gorgeous palace. And the servant is devoted to this king and writes on every single beam of the house, honor to my king, honor to the one I care about, honor to this person. And the king then gets inside the palace, and that seems less unusual. A king orders a palace to be made, and that palace becomes the king's. But the king arrives inside and sees the honor that the servant infused into the house for him and says, how can I leave my servant outside? Someone who has shown me such honor and devotion, someone who has created such a beautiful space for me, he should be inside here with me. And so the king calls out to the servant and says, come on inside. It is as though God does the same thing to Moses. It says, I see all that you have done for me. Come on inside. Right now, we're living in a time where all of us are saying, come on inside. And it may be for some of us that we are starting to not see the beautiful honor in our homes that we may have at some point. We're starting to perhaps not make sure that we're giving our loved ones the language of affection, that leshon chaviva, of calling out to them and making sure that they're focused on us before we speak. And so I think this very first verse of our Torah portion is reminding us in two ways that we should speak gently and lovingly to our loved ones that we are sharing our homes with, that we should call out to our friends who are not present over our various forms of technology that we can call out to them, make sure that they're listening, and then share something that is going on and sharing holiness. Because again, this verse introduces a book all about creating holiness. The other notion of creating something special inside. We can find ways to make our homes show the honor that we want to show to our loved ones that we share our homes with, and to show honor to our souls and to ourselves. Some of us might be feeling a little overwhelmed with bringing our work lives into our home lives, and others may be facing an issue where we are seeing not as much time, or too much time, not as much to do. And it's becoming hard to enjoy our homes in the same way for some of us. And so I think if we remember to imagine on every single beam of our homes, every wall, every doorway, every shelf, this is a home, a place for holiness for me, for my family, and for God. And so let us offer ourselves the blessing of seeing our homes as a sanctuary, as a place to build holiness. So Moses also, when he's come inside, one commentator says it's possible that Moses didn't go in initially because he thought his work was done. He brought the Israelites out of Egypt, and he may have thought his work was done. And God says, no, come inside. You have built this holy space for me, and you are still the leader of this people. And so may we all see our homes as a new space for holiness and continue to be leaders and lovers in our own lives, and to be gentle and call out with love to everyone else that we encounter and share our loved days with. I want to say Shabbat Shalom. I look forward to embarking on exploring the book of Vayikra, the book of Leviticus, with you over the next several weeks. God willing, someday back in our building, but for now, happy to do it here as well. And say Shabbat Shalom. I hope at 10:30 you will rejoin us with Cantor Melissa for the Shabbat Chance Encounter. She'll do a little liturgy, a little Torah, and we will continue to have Shabbat together as a community. And at 6 o'clock, we will join together again to say goodbye to Shabbat with Havdalah. Shabbat Shalom. I look forward to speaking again next week.